a forgotten bag, a poor boy, and a decision that changed his destiny. Ethan faced heart-wrenching questions. This money could help my family, but can I live without honesty? Could he muster the strength and perseverance to chase his dreams? A story of honesty, perseverance, courage, and relentless effort. Will Ethan be able to transform his life and that of his family? The miller's small kitchen on a quiet evening was bathed in the soft glow of a warm yellow light reflecting off an old wooden table. At the head of the table sat Grandpa Edward, gently filling with a cup of tea that had long gone cold, his gaze fixed on Ethan's empty chair. He couldn't help but recall that fateful night 2 years ago when a traffic accident took the lives of Ethan and Leo's parents. From that moment, the two boys had returned to live with their grandparents, and Ethan, despite his young age, had solemnly told him, "I'll take care of our family in place of Mom and Dad." Leo looked up, breaking Edward's train of thought. "Grandpa, isn't Ethan having dinner with us tonight?" Grandpa Edward smiled faintly and replied, "Ethan's still at his part-time job, earning money to help the family. He always says, 'I'm doing everything for Grandpa, Grandma, and Leo.'" Leo nodded thoughtfully, taking a bite of his bread, a soft smile crossing his face. "Ethan is the best. I'll study hard so I can help him take care of our family one day." Though Ethan wasn't physically present, his spirit seemed to fill every corner of that small kitchen. Meanwhile, at the fast food restaurant, Ethan was cleaning tables when his eyes landed on a forgotten bag. Picking it up, he felt the soft leather under his fingers and opened it to check its contents. Inside was a thick wallet, and as he slightly parted it, large bills neatly stacked caught his gaze. A deep breath escaped Ethan's chest. He realized this bag belonged to Mr. Henry, a regular customer who often forgot things due to his Alzheimer's. But this time, it felt different. Ethan stared at the wallet in his hands, his breath hitching. The neatly arranged bills inside gleamed faintly under the dim light of the restaurant. "We need this money. Grandpa needs it. Grandma needs it. Leo needs it." The thought crept into his mind, like a tempting whisper. He gripped the wallet tightly, feeling its weight through his fingers. "Just take it and hide it. No one will ever know. Mr. Henry is old. He'll probably think he dropped it somewhere. I'm not really hurting anyone. Right?" Ethan's heart raced, and he noticed a slight tremble in his fingers as he considered slipping the wallet into his pocket. But then, another thought struck him, like a sudden beam of light in his mind. If I do this, what kind of person will I become? A thief? Someone Leo could never respect? Someone who couldn't look Grandpa and Grandma in the eye again? Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, as if trying to silence the voices in his head. But the whispers persisted. "Your family needs this money badly. You could do so much with it. But is it really worth it? Am I willing to trade my honesty for some cash?" Ethan took a deep breath, his chest heavy with conflicting emotions. He pictured Grandpa, tirelessly working in his worn-out security uniform, Grandma, meticulously counting every penny in the kitchen, and Leo, diligently studying with his old tattered textbooks. His heart ached. Ethan opened his eyes. His mind was still a storm of thoughts, but his hands had steadied. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "If I take this money, I won't be myself anymore. I won't be someone my family can be proud of." A wave of emotion surged within him, washing away the remnants of selfish temptation. Ethan grabbed the bag firmly, stood up, and declared to himself, "No, I'll return it. Not because Mr. Henry needs it, but because I need to keep being the person I am." After finishing his shift, on his way home, Ethan stopped by Mr. Henry's house to return the bag. At the gate, Mr. Henry was overjoyed to receive it back, and Daniel Wallace, who happened to be nearby, witnessed the scene. Curious, Daniel approached and started a conversation, listening as Mr. Henry spoke about Ethan's honesty. He tried to chat with Ethan, but the boy, worried about the late hour and not wanting to alarm his grandparents, quickly excused himself and left. Ethan's hurried demeanor and simple appearance piqued Daniel's curiosity, sparking a desire to learn more about the young man. The next morning, a sleek, luxurious car slowly came to a stop in front of Ethan's modest home. The soft hum of the engine caught the curious eyes of the surrounding neighbors. From the car stepped Daniel Wallace, dressed in an elegant suit, his presence instantly altering the atmosphere of the quiet neighborhood. Grandpa Edward opened the door, his expression briefly flickering with surprise as he took in the sight of the distinguished visitor standing at the threshold. With a composed demeanor, Daniel politely bowed his head in greeting and was invited inside. As he entered the small home, Daniel's gaze took in every detail: the weathered walls, the worn wooden furniture, and the warm but undeniably humble atmosphere. Seated at the modest table, Daniel began to converse with the family. He could feel the dedication and tireless efforts of Grandpa Edward and Grandma Margaret in supporting the household, as well as Ethan's emerging role as a young pillar of the family. With a sincere tone, Daniel turned to Ethan and said, "You did a wonderful thing by returning my father's belongings. But what impresses me even more is your honesty and sense of responsibility. I believe you have great potential. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you a part-time internship at my company. This could be an opportunity for you to explore your abilities." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise, tinged with emotion. Grandma Margaret's curiosity was evident, while Leo gazed at Daniel with admiration. In that moment, a new door seemed to open for Ethan, one he never anticipated his act of honesty would unlock. After Daniel left, the miller's small kitchen fell into silence. Grandma Margaret stood near the stove, arms folded over her apron, her eyes heavy with worry. She was the first to break the quiet, her voice tinged with doubt and unease. "Rich people like that, can they truly be kind? Everything has a price. An offer like this, out of the blue. I'm just afraid they're taking advantage of you, Ethan." She stepped closer, gently placing her hand on Ethan's shoulder, her tone softening but still filled with urgency. "At the fast food place, you're doing well. I know you're safe, and we all feel at ease. But going somewhere new, working for someone like that, who knows what you'll face?" Ethan didn't reply immediately. He looked down, his eyes fixed on his hands gripping the edge of the table, the conflict written all over his face. Grandpa Edward, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was calm yet profound. "Margaret, I understand your concerns, but not every door that opens is a trap. Sometimes it's an opportunity, even if it's also a challenge. And challenges aren't always bad. What's most important is that Ethan makes this decision for himself. It's his future, after all." Ethan lifted his gaze to his grandfather, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and the weight of responsibility. He thought about his current job at the restaurant. Exhausting, but it brought in a small, steady income to help the family. It was a stability that Grandma Margaret relied on. But then Daniel's words echoed in his mind. "You have great potential. This is a chance to discover what you're capable of." Ethan thought about his dream of becoming a businessman, not just to change his own life, but to lift his family out of poverty. The conflict within him grew sharper. "If I say no, I'll stay here, safe but confined. I'll never know what I could have achieved. But if I say yes and fail, Grandma will be heartbroken, Grandpa will be disappointed, and Leo will think his big brother made the wrong choice." Finally, Ethan raised his head, his eyes now steady and resolute. His voice was slow but filled with determination. "Grandma, I understand your concerns. I don't want you to worry, but if I don't try, I'll never know what I'm capable of. I want to change our family's life. I want to be someone Grandpa and you can be proud of, and someone Leo can look up to." Grandma Margaret looked at him for a long moment, her gaze a mix of anxiety and pride. Eventually she sighed, her voice soft but full of love. "All right, but you have to promise me, if anything feels wrong, you'll come back. Don't push yourself too hard and end up suffering, Ethan." Grandpa Edward smiled faintly, giving Ethan a gentle pat on the shoulder. His voice was warm and encouraging. "You've made your decision, so give it your all. But remember, family is always here for you." Leo, who had been quiet the entire time, suddenly looked up, his eyes bright and his voice small, but brimming with confidence. "Ethan, I believe in you." Ethan glanced at Leo, then back at his grandparents. In that moment, he realized his responsibility wasn't just to reassure his family, it was to make them proud. With this decision, He accepted the challenges that awaited him, determined to face whatever lay ahead. Ethan stepped into Daniel Wallace's office, his movements slightly hesitant, but his gaze resolute. Taking a deep breath, he spoke clearly. "I've thought it through. I accept your offer." Daniel smiled, his expression encouraging. "Good, Ethan. This will be the beginning of a great journey." He then asked about Ethan's motivations and dreams. Ethan replied, his voice calm but firm. "I want to change my family's life, to ease my grandparents' worries, and I want to become a businessman, like you." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That's a noble dream, but the journey won't be easy. Always remember why you started." Finally, Daniel stood, extending his hand. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m., come to the company. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do." As Ethan left the office, he felt a mix of anxiety and hope swelling within him, fully aware that a new chapter of his life had just begun. Daniel stepped into Jack Harper's office, where sunlight streamed through the windows, casting light over the cluttered desk piled with documents. Jack sat behind the desk, arms crossed, his stern gaze fixed on Daniel. Daniel began, his tone calm and composed. "I'd like to talk to you about a young man named Ethan. He impressed me with his honesty and sense of responsibility. I believe he has great potential." Jack frowned, cutting him off. "A young, inexperienced kid. Daniel, my team isn't a place for experiments." Leaning forward slightly, Daniel's voice grew firmer. "Jack, I'm only asking for a 6-month trial. If he doesn't perform, I'll take full responsibility. But if we don't give him a chance, we'll never know what he's truly capable of." Jack paused for a few seconds before reluctantly nodding. "Fine, but I'm not going to go easy on him. If he fails, the trial ends." Daniel smiled, extending his hand for a handshake. "Thank you, Jack. I trust Ethan won't let you down." As Daniel left the office, Jack leaned back in his chair, muttering to himself, "We'll see what this kid can do." Daniel led Ethan into the sales team's office, a large but cluttered space filled with stacks of documents and sticky notes plastered everywhere. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward the two of them. Stopping near the entrance, Daniel leaned slightly toward Ethan and whispered, "I've spoken to Jack. He's agreed to a 6-month trial for you. Now let me introduce you to the team." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Stepping into the room, Daniel addressed the team in a clear voice. "Everyone, this is Ethan. He'll be joining us as a part-time intern. I hope you'll support him during his time here." Jack stood up from his desk, extending his hand to Ethan with a reluctant air. His tone was polite but cold. "Welcome, Ethan. I hope you take this seriously. Our team values results, not empty effort." Samantha, sitting nearby, offered a light smile and said, "Hi, Ethan. If you need anything, feel free to ask." Her voice was courteous but not overly warm. In the corner, Ryan simply nodded in acknowledgement, his expression indifferent, as though Ethan's arrival had little bearing on him. From another corner of the room, Tyler smirked, his eyes gleaming with amusement. He muttered just loud enough for Ethan to hear, "Oh, great. A rookie. Let's hope you fit in well." The sarcastic remark made Ethan tense up slightly, but he maintained his composure. As Daniel left the room, Jack turned back with a sharp tone. "Ryan, you'll mentor Ethan for the first month. Make sure he learns the basics and doesn't bother anyone." Ryan shrugged indifferently. "Sure, whatever." Ethan took another deep breath and spoke slowly, his voice steady but full of determination. "Thank you all for accepting me into the team. I deeply respect your experience and look forward to learning from you. I promise to work hard and not let you down." His sincere words were met with little reaction. Samantha offered a faint smile, while Tyler's smirk deepened into a mocking expression. Ethan took his seat at the desk Ryan had pointed out, his eyes brushing over the thick piles of documents before him. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but the challenges only strengthened his resolve to prove himself. The sales team's office was always noisy, filled with the constant ringing of phones, the clacking of keyboards, and fragmented conversations. Ethan sat next to Ryan at the shared desk, his eyes fixed intently on every action Ryan took. On the desk lay a long list of names and phone numbers, each line presenting a new challenge for Ethan. Ryan, with his calm demeanor, organized the documents while explaining. This job starts with preparation. First, you need to sort the list. Identify potential clients, people who might actually be interested in our products. Don't waste time on those who clearly aren't a good fit. Ethan listened intently, jotting down notes meticulously in his notebook, his gaze never leaving Ryan as he picked up the phone to demonstrate. Ryan's voice over the call was confident and composed, his questions carefully phrased, and his responses smooth and professional. After finishing the call, Ryan turned to Ethan, setting the phone on the desk. You saw how I did it, right? Now it's your turn. Start with the easier ones, people who've already shown some interest. Ethan picked up the phone, his palms slightly damp with sweat. Dialing the first number, he was met with a cold and disinterested voice on the other end. He tried to present his pitch, but the customer quickly declined. Placing the phone down, Ethan felt both relief and disappointment. Ryan nodded, his tone neutral, neither critical nor overly encouraging. Not bad for a first attempt, but you need to work on how you frame your questions. Don't rush. Build trust first. Customers don't want to feel like they're being forced to buy something. Day by day, Ethan grew more confident. He learned to adjust his tone, listen carefully to clients, and most importantly, not to be discouraged by rejection. By the end of the month, Ethan's determination shone as he dialed the number of a potential client he had been following up with all week. The conversation was far from easy. He had to patiently explain every detail, answer challenging questions, and keep his voice steady and calm. Finally, when the client agreed to sign the contract, Ethan could hardly believe his ears. Grabbing the file, he rushed to Jack's desk, his voice barely able to contain his excitement. I've signed my first contract. Jack glanced at the document, nodded, but his expression remained indifferent. His tone was cold. Good, but don't think this is anything special. This job isn't about lucky breaks. Focus on maintaining consistent results. From the corner of the room, Tyler let out a derisive laugh, his mocking voice loud enough for Ethan to hear. Pure luck, kid. Don't get too cocky. Ethan stood still, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Tyler's ridicule dampened his newfound joy, but he refused to let it affect him. I don't need to prove anything to him. Time will tell, he thought. Returning to his desk, his eyes burned with renewed determination. As Ryan passed by, he patted Ethan on the shoulder with a light smile of encouragement. Good job. Keep it up. Ethan returned the smile, silently grateful for Ryan's guidance over the past month. Sitting down, he glanced at the unfinished client list, vowing to himself, this is just the beginning. I'll prove my worth day by day. Amid the bustling noise of the sales office, Ethan felt more certain than ever that each small step was bringing him closer to his dream. The sales office was eerily quiet at the end of the day, with only Ethan remaining at his desk. He stared blankly at the unfinished client list before him. 2 months had passed, and he had followed every piece of advice Ryan had given him, sorting client lists, making calls, taking notes, and analyzing feedback. He had diligently adhered to every step of the process, yet his efforts felt like wind blowing across a desert, leaving no trace behind. He realized that while he followed the methods correctly, he lacked the finesse, confidence, and flexibility Ryan demonstrated effortlessly. Each night, Ethan returned home weighed down by exhaustion. Sitting on his bed, he would pick up his phone and practice imagining conversations and trying to replicate Ryan's persuasive tone. Yet every attempt left him feeling inadequate. His voice lacked the strength and conviction needed to truly engage customers. Some nights, he would lie in bed with his eyes closed, picturing himself completing a flawless call, introducing himself, addressing objections, and guiding the client to agree. He practiced this routine relentlessly, to the point where these imagined conversations replayed in his mind even as he slept. But the results remained unchanged. His numbers on the performance board didn't budge. Ethan began to realize the deeper issue. He lacked an emotional connection with the customers. While his calls were technically correct, they lacked energy, sincerity, and empathy, qualities that made clients feel valued and understood. To them, he seemed like a machine, not a person genuinely wanting to help. The pressure within the team also began to mount as overall performance dipped. Frustration surfaced among team members, and complaints inevitably reached Jack. Determined to address the situation, Jack called for a team meeting. In the small sales meeting room, the air felt heavy and tense. Jack sat at the head of the table, his sharp eyes scanning each member before settling on Ethan. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice cutting through the silence like a hammer striking a nail. Ethan, you're not just failing at your own work. You're dragging the team down. We need results, not excuses. If you don't improve immediately, I'll have no choice but to remove you from the team. Ethan lowered his head, his hands clenched tightly under the table as a wave of shame washed over him. In his mind, questions swirled like knives stabbing at his self-worth. Did I make the wrong choice? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Have all my efforts been for nothing? From the corner of the table, Tyler smirked, his mocking voice cutting through the tension. Maybe you should quit before you make things worse. Interns are only good at causing problems. Samantha frowned, her disapproval of Tyler's comment evident in her gaze, though she said nothing. Ethan took a deep breath, determined not to let those words break him. Despite the overwhelming sense of failure and embarrassment, he refused to show any weakness under the scrutinizing eyes of the team. I can't give up, he thought. Not now, but how can I improve? Maybe I'm not good enough. But if I quit, I'll always be a failure. And what about my family? What will Leo think of me? As the meeting ended, Ethan stepped out of the room, feeling as though the world had turned its back on him. He stood motionless in the hallway, his eyes unfocused as he stared into the void ahead. Inside him was a storm of inner conflict and crushing pressure, but amidst the turmoil, a small flicker of hope remained, a quiet voice urging him, keep going, just a little longer, and you'll find a way. Clenching his fists, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. I won't stop. Not yet. Not now. The meeting room was now empty, save for Ethan sitting quietly. The dim yellow light reflected off the table, illuminating his young face weighed down by disappointment. He leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the unfinished client list tightly. Jack's harsh criticism and Tyler's biting sarcasm echoed relentlessly in his mind, cutting into his pride like unyielding blades. Ethan questioned himself. Where did I go wrong? Why does all my effort seem to amount to nothing? The soft sound of footsteps in the hallway pulled him from his thoughts. Samantha, with her characteristic calm and confident demeanor, appeared at the doorway. In her hand was a steaming cup of coffee, and her gaze, though firm, carried a quiet warmth. Without saying a word, she pulled out a chair and sat across from Ethan. Her eyes swept over the client list on the table before meeting his. Her steady voice broke the silence. Ethan, I can see you're struggling. I can't stand by and watch anymore. You need a different approach. Ethan looked up, momentarily surprised, his eyes flickering with a faint glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. But doubt quickly clouded his face. Why are you helping me? You don't have to do this. Samantha smiled, setting the coffee on the table, her gaze sincere. You know, I admire you, Ethan. When Daniel told me your story, how you chose honesty despite your family's struggles, I thought that was something truly special. Not many people could do that. Over time, I've seen your hard work and determination. You have potential, Ethan, but what you're missing is an effective method. And I believe that with the right guidance, you can excel. Her words were like a faint light piercing through thick darkness. Ethan sat up straight at her, the weight in his chest lifting slightly. His voice was soft but filled with gratitude. Thank you. I don't know what to say. I'm really grateful that you believe in me. If you're willing to help, I'll give it everything I've got. Samantha nodded, her eyes shining with determination. Good. Then we'll take it step by step. Listen to me and start with the basics. I'll teach you how I work, but you must promise me one thing. Don't give up. In the days that followed, Samantha became Ethan's dedicated mentor. She taught him how to communicate more naturally with clients, how to ask the right questions, and most importantly, how to empathize and connect emotionally. She emphasized that sales weren't just about following a process, but about making clients feel heard and valued. Ethan paid close attention to every word she said, diligently taking notes and applying her advice immediately to his work. The early days were challenging. There were calls that were abruptly cut off, confusing client responses, and moments when he felt he had said the wrong thing. But this time, Ethan didn't let failure dishearten him. Each time he hit a wall, he returned to Samantha, analyzed his mistakes, and refined his approach for the next attempt. Week by week, Ethan's improvement became evident. He no longer felt lost when picking up the phone. Instead, he gained confidence and flexibility in handling different situations. Small contracts started to come through, bringing him a sense of pride and excitement he hadn't experienced before. Samantha watched his progress with satisfaction. One day she told him, "Ethan, I always knew you could do it. Now I'm certain you'll achieve even greater things. Don't stop now." Ethan's transformation didn't just impress Samantha, it surprised Jack as well. Reviewing the team's performance report, Jack couldn't hide his astonishment. "Well done, Ethan. I didn't expect you to improve so quickly. Keep it up." Tyler, on the other hand, was visibly annoyed. His cold stares at Ethan grew more frequent, and his sarcastic comments became a regular occurrence. But this time, Ethan no longer paid him any attention. For Ethan, what mattered most was his own progress and the trust Samantha had placed in him. Standing at his desk, Ethan looked at the remaining client list, his eyes burning with determination. He knew the journey ahead was still long, but now he had a clear path to follow. Samantha walked by, placing a hand on his shoulder with a smile. "I've always believed in you. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself, Ethan." Ethan nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. The exhaustion he once felt had been replaced by an unwavering belief that not only could he succeed, he could exceed everyone's expectations. The office buzzed with a busy atmosphere, but now Ethan had become the center of attention. After months of honing his skills and learning from Samantha, he not only improved his communication abilities, but also learned how to connect emotionally with clients. The contracts he brought in grew larger and larger, taking the team's revenue to new heights. During a team meeting, Jack couldn't hide his satisfaction as he stood in front of the report board, his eyes fixed on Ethan. "Ethan, I never thought that in just a few months, you could achieve results far beyond expectations. Well done." The room erupted into applause, and Samantha's eyes glimmered with quiet pride. But in a distant corner, Tyler smirked faintly, his eyes darkened with envy. Jealousy quickly turned into action. Tyler began plotting to sabotage Ethan. The first time, he accidentally sent Ethan's critical documents to the wrong clients, causing them to receive incorrect quotations. When the clients called to complain, Ethan was alarmed and had to hurriedly apologize and rectify the situation. This not only cost him time, but also strained the relationships he had been building. Tyler watched from afar with a smug smile, as if waiting to see Ethan crumble. But Tyler didn't stop there. He continued by deleting crucial data from Ethan's client records in the system, leaving him in a vulnerable position during client interactions. On one call, when a client requested information that Ethan couldn't immediately provide, he felt flustered and momentarily lost confidence. Yet instead of giving up, he quickly resolved the situation, restored the data, and carried on with his work. One late evening, when Ethan caught Tyler lurking near his desk, he approached him, his voice calm yet sharp. "Tyler, if you have a problem with me, just say it outright. But what you're doing doesn't only affect me, it harms the entire team." Tyler shrugged, a sarcastic smile curling his lips. "I don't know what you're talking about, kid. If you're having trouble, maybe you should check your own work methods before blaming others." Though Tyler's words were provocative, Ethan merely looked at him with composed determination. He knew he needed to stay focused on his goals instead of letting such actions drag him down. Despite facing compounded challenges, Ethan refused to let the sabotage break him. He meticulously double-checked every detail, worked even harder, and concentrated on building trust with his clients. These efforts not only helped him overcome obstacles, but also continued to secure major contracts. After landing a critical deal, Ethan walked out of the meeting room with a relieved smile on his face. Samantha, waiting in the hallway, looked at him with pride. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said softly, "I told you, Ethan, you can do it. Don't let anyone hold you back." Ethan's growing success left Tyler restless. The anger and envy within him deepened, and Tyler began contemplating more dangerous plans to bring Ethan down. But Ethan was no longer the inexperienced young man he had once been. With confidence and resilience, he braced himself for the challenges ahead. He knew this was not only an opportunity to prove his worth, but also a way to protect what he had worked so hard to achieve. Under the light of success, he moved forward, refusing to let anyone or anything hold him back. Early in the morning, soft sunlight streamed through the window of Ethan's room, illuminating the desk where he was preparing for his graduation exam. Books and densely written notes covered the surface, each line a testament to the hard work he had put in over the past weeks. This exam was not just a major milestone in Ethan's life, but also the hope that his grandparents and Leo had pinned on him. Suddenly, the sound of his phone ringing broke the silence. Picking up the phone, Ethan heard Jack's familiar cold voice. "Ethan, come to my office right away. There's an important task I need to discuss with you." A sense of unease crept in, but Ethan quickly gathered his books, grabbed his notebook out of habit, and rushed to Jack's office. Entering the office, he saw Jack seated behind his desk, wearing his usual stern expression. Before Ethan could speak, Jack slid a folder toward him. "Tyler said you could handle this client. This is a big client, and they can only meet today. I hope you won't mess it up." The sudden statement hit Ethan like a hammer. He froze, his eyes wide with shock. Stammering, he tried to explain, "But I have my graduation exam today. Could we reschedule the meeting for tomorrow?" Jack shook his head, his gaze unwavering, his tone firm. "This client is very busy. If we don't meet today, we'll lose them. And if that happens, you'll be held responsible." Ethan clenched the notebook in his hand, his heart heavy with confusion and pressure. In that moment, it felt as though the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Why today? Why now? Questions raced through his mind, but no answers came. Leaving Jack's office, Ethan felt as though the entire world was collapsing on him. He walked slowly down the hallway, his eyes staring blankly at the cold tiles beneath him. In his head, conflicting thoughts swirled endlessly, pushing him into a corner. What should I do? Skip the exam to meet the client? But this is my graduation exam. My grandparents and Leo have placed so much hope in me. I can't let them down. But if I don't meet the client today, Jack will never trust me again. Images of his family flashed through Ethan's mind like a short emotional film. He saw Leo sitting at the desk, focused and serious as he worked on his homework. He saw Grandpa Edward, tired after a long day of work, his calloused hands massaging his aching legs. And Grandma Margaret, small and frail, bustling in the kitchen, her worried eyes glancing at the clock, waiting for him to come home for dinner. I can't let them down, but how do I manage both? Ethan stopped walking, took a deep breath to regain his composure, and an idea sparked in his mind. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and called the client, keeping his tone professional. "Hello, this is Ethan from Daniel Wallace's company. I'd really like to meet with you to discuss this matter. Could we reschedule for tomorrow morning?" On the other end, the client's firm voice replied, "Sorry, I'll be traveling to another city by the end of today. If we can't meet today, I'll go with another provider." The refusal hit Ethan like a cold splash of water, but he didn't allow himself to panic. Taking a deep breath, he thought quickly and kept his voice steady. "In that case, could we meet late this afternoon, about 25 minutes after I finish a personal matter? I promise to be on time." The client was silent for a moment before responding, somewhat reluctantly. "All right, but if you're late, consider the deal off." Ethan hung up, feeling the pressure weigh heavily with each breath. He knew that to fulfill this promise, he would have to race against time and surpass his own limits. Yet, a small spark of hope ignited within him. He still had a chance to handle both tasks. Determined, he vowed not to let anyone down. Ethan left the exam room the moment the clock struck the final hour, clutching his document bag tightly. He nearly sprinted out of the school, his hurried steps drawing curious looks from passers-by. On the way to the bus stop, he checked his watch, each passing second feeling like a hammer driving home the urgency of the situation. When Ethan arrived at the bus stop, he realized that the bus he was waiting for had already left. Heart pounding, he had no choice but to run nearly 2 kilometers to the next stop. The streets were crowded, and every stride felt like a race against time. His breath grew heavier, but he didn't stop, muttering under his breath, "I can't be late, I can't be late." Suddenly, rain began to pour. The cold droplets stung his face, and his clothes were quickly soaked. He held the document bag tightly to his chest, as if it were his last lifeline. The road was slippery, and his shoes were drenched, but Ethan pushed forward, defying the exhaustion that threatened to consume him. Finally, he caught up with the bus at the next stop. He jumped on, his face flushed with exhaustion, his shirt clinging to his body, but the determination in his eyes remained bright. The bus moved slowly, each tick of the clock feeling like an eternity. Ethan checked the time repeatedly, whispering his promise to the client. 25 minutes. Just 25 minutes. I'll make it on time. When the bus stopped a few hundred meters from the client's office, Ethan jumped off and kept running. The rain didn't stop, but he didn't care. His wet shoes squelched with every step, each stride heavier than the last, but he didn't falter. As he approached the office, the clock showed 3 minutes remaining. Standing under the eaves, he tried to straighten his wrinkled clothes and brush through his disheveled hair. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he walked in with a professional smile. Though his body felt on the verge of collapse, his eyes radiated unwavering determination. The client observed him, clearly noticing the ordeal he had endured to arrive. But Ethan didn't let it affect the meeting. His voice was steady, his presentation confident, and every detail of his proposal was accurate and convincing. Despite his fatigue, Ethan left a strong impression on the client, not only through his professionalism, but also through his extraordinary effort to keep his promise. When the meeting ended, the client stood up, shaking his hand with a satisfied smile. "I can see you're dedicated and professional. We'll move forward with this contract." Ethan returned the smile, his legs nearly giving out from exhaustion. As he stepped out of the office, he nearly collapsed, but his heart was filled with pride. "I did it, not just for this job, but for myself." Daniel had just returned from a long business trip. He walked into Jack's office with a relaxed but purposeful demeanor, his eyes lighting up as he glanced around the room. After a brief exchange of greetings, he went straight to the point. "Jack, I've just returned and want to hear about Ethan. How's he doing? I hope he's still performing well." Jack looked up from the stack of documents on his desk, his usually calm face showing a flicker of contemplation. Interlocking his fingers, he gave a slight nod. "He's made significant progress. At first, I didn't think Ethan would keep up, but he's proven his effort. His recent contracts are quite impressive, more confident, more proactive, just as you expected." Daniel couldn't hide a satisfied smile. Leaning lightly against the desk, his voice carried a sense of pride. "I knew from the start that Ethan had potential. He's not only hardworking, but also has a willingness to learn that not everyone possesses. This is exactly what I hoped for when I gave him the opportunity. I believe Ethan is capable of much more." But Jack, with the cautious instinct of a seasoned manager, maintained a neutral stance. His tone was firm as he emphasized, "It's true that Ethan is doing well, but we need to look ahead. The 6-month probation isn't over yet. I need to see him sustain this performance in the long term. This job doesn't just demand a few moments of excellence, but requires persistence and consistency." Daniel smiled faintly, not arguing, but his eyes reflected deep confidence. "I understand that, Jack. Prudence is essential, and I respect the way you manage. But I believe Ethan isn't just a short-term talent. He's a rough diamond, and what he has accomplished proves we weren't mistaken. He won't just meet our expectations, he'll surpass them." Jack remained silent for a moment, his gaze softening before he nodded slightly. "Let's hope so. If Ethan can maintain and build on his current progress, he'll undoubtedly become a key part of the team." Daniel straightened up, his gaze shifting toward the window. The morning light cast a glow on his face, revealing a profound sense of conviction. "I'll continue to keep an eye on him, but I have faith that Ethan will overcome every challenge. He's not doing this just for himself, but for his family and for everything he holds dear. And that's what will drive him to go further." The sales office was filled with tension. Jack entered with a grim expression, his phone still displaying the just-ended call. He strode straight to Ethan's desk ignoring the curious glances of others. He slammed the phone onto the desk with a loud thud, startling everyone in the room. Jack stared intently at Ethan, his voice as sharp as a blade. "Ethan, your biggest client just called. They're threatening to cancel the contract and even sue us. What the hell did you do?" Ethan shot to his feet, feeling as if the blood in his veins had frozen. He stammered, "There must be some misunderstanding. I'll check right away." Jack slammed his hand on the desk and roared, "Misunderstanding? They said the product doesn't work, the service is awful, and their time has been wasted. Do you think that's a misunderstanding? If we lose this client, do you think you'll still have a place here?" Ethan lowered his head, his mind a whirlwind of worry and self-reproach. But he managed to keep his composure and replied, "I'm sorry, I'll take care of this immediately." Jack stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing tone. "Listen to me, Ethan. This is your one chance. Either you make the client happy or you take full responsibility and get out of here. Do you understand?" Ethan took a deep breath and nodded. When he called the client, Ethan was met with even greater fury. The voice of a middle-aged man on the other end thundered like a storm. "You and your company are utterly irresponsible. I've wasted an entire week with your useless product. Don't say sorry again. I don't want to hear it." Ethan lowered his voice, striving to remain calm. "I truly apologize for disappointing you. I'd like to meet in person today to resolve this issue. Could you give me one more chance?" The client replied coldly, "One more chance? This is the last time I'm listening to those words. Be here this afternoon, and you'd better fix this." That afternoon, Ethan arrived at the client's office with a bag of documents and a replacement product. As he entered, he was met with the cold glare of the client. The middle-aged man stood up, arms crossed, pointing to a chair. "Sit down, and I don't want to hear any excuses. Your product has been a massive disappointment." Ethan bowed slightly, his voice steady but sincere. "I understand your frustration, and I deeply apologize for letting you down. After reviewing the situation, I found the issue isn't with the product itself, but with the incorrect instructions we provided. This was entirely our fault, and I've brought the correct product along with updated instructions. I'd like to resolve this for you right now." The client raised an eyebrow, his tone laced with skepticism. "Resolve it? Why wasn't it done right the first time? Don't let me down further." Ethan immediately got to work, inspecting the product and cross-referencing the steps the client had followed with the old instructions. He discovered that the previous documentation had caused the misunderstanding. Patiently, Ethan explained each step, his voice even and clear. "This was entirely our error in providing faulty instructions. I deeply regret the inconvenience this has caused and assure you this will never happen again." When the client tested the product following the new instructions, it worked seamlessly. The anger in his eyes gradually softened, though his tone remained stern. "So it was due to incorrect instructions. But you've cost me a lot of time and money. I hope you've learned your lesson." Ethan bowed deeply, his voice earnest. "I sincerely apologize and thank you for giving us the chance to make things right. This has been a significant lesson for me and my entire team." When Ethan returned to the office, his clothes were still damp from the rain, but his eyes gleamed with determination. Jack was waiting for him, his face still tense. "Well, or should I start preparing legal documents?" Ethan, despite his exhaustion, stood tall and replied firmly, "The client has withdrawn their complaint and retained the contract. I resolved it successfully." Jack studied him for a moment, then nodded, his tone still stern but less harsh. "Good. But don't make me take another call like that again." Ethan sank into his chair, his shoulders heavy with fatigue but his heart filled with pride. Samantha walked over, a bright smile on her face. "I heard you handled it. Congratulations, Ethan. You've officially passed your probation period." Ethan glanced around the office and let out a deep breath of relief. "The past 6 months have been a challenging journey, but I made it. This is just the beginning." It was a fresh morning at the company headquarters. Ethan had just finished presenting the team's monthly sales report, earning a look of approval from Jack. Returning to his desk to prepare for the day ahead, he was interrupted by a call from Daniel's secretary. Mr. Wallace wants to see you in his office immediately. Straightening his attire, Ethan felt a mix of nervousness and curiosity as he climbed the stairs leading to Daniel's office. Entering the spacious office, Ethan was struck by a sense of grandeur combined with warmth. Natural light poured through the large windows, illuminating the dark wooden desk and the steaming cup of coffee placed neatly before Daniel. Sitting back in his chair, Daniel exuded calm authority, his sharp gaze hinting at deep contemplation. As Ethan approached, Daniel rose, his gentle smile carrying an air of mystery. His voice was warm, yet firm. "Ethan, take a seat. I'd like to discuss something important with you." Daniel sat upright, his eyes fixed on Ethan as though carefully weighing his words. Speaking slowly and with pride, each of his words carried weight, carving the silence with significance. "Ethan, I've been observing your journey over the past 6 months. From a young, inexperienced individual, you've grown remarkably. The challenges you've overcome have not only showcased your effort, but also revealed your innate leadership qualities. You've not only helped Jack's team achieve better results, but also earned the trust of some of our toughest clients." Ethan lowered his head, his voice humble, yet tinged with surprise. "Thank you, but I'm just trying to do my part." Daniel leaned forward, his sharp eyes gleaming with expectation. Smiling, he spoke softly yet decisively. "Yes, but you haven't just done your part. You've exceeded my expectations, and now I believe you're ready for a new challenge." Daniel stood and walked slowly to the large window. With his hands clasped behind his back, he gazed at the skyscrapers bathed in the golden light of the morning. A moment of silence hung in the air, as though he was weighing a monumental decision. Finally, he turned back, his sharp eyes locking onto Ethan's, his voice deep and authoritative. "The company is expanding. We need to establish a new sales team to tap into the potential market in the Western region, and I want to entrust this task to you." Ethan's head shot up, his eyes wide with disbelief and a touch of confusion. He stammered as if unable to fully grasp what he'd just heard. "Establish a new sales team? You mean I'd lead it?" Daniel nodded, moving closer to the desk and lightly resting his hand on the edge of the chair. His voice brimmed with certainty and trust. "Exactly, you will be the team leader. Of course, I know this won't be an easy task, but I believe you have the experience, perseverance, and vision to make it happen. Your journey thus far has proven that. What you've achieved demonstrates not only your ability to work, but also the leadership qualities needed to guide others." Daniel's words resonated like a declaration, leaving Ethan momentarily stunned by the weight of the responsibility being placed on his shoulders. Ethan lowered his gaze to the desk, his mind flooded with memories of the past 6 months, the early days of uncertainty, Jack's relentless criticism over his mistakes, Tyler's skeptical looks, and the nights spent practicing alone in exhaustion. Yet, he also remembered the small victories, the challenging deals he had closed, and Samantha's recognition of his efforts. The thought of leading a new sales team stirred both excitement and apprehension within him. Taking a deep breath, he spoke, his voice betraying his unease. "I'm not sure if I'm capable. This is a huge responsibility. If I fail, I'll let you down." Daniel smiled, his gaze full of encouragement, as he stepped closer and placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. His voice was warm and steady, carrying the weight of his belief. "I understand your hesitation. It's a natural reaction when facing a big challenge. But remember, no one is perfect from the start. What makes someone successful isn't avoiding mistakes, but learning from them. I didn't choose you solely for what you've done, but for what I believe you can achieve. Don't doubt yourself, Ethan. I believe in you." Ethan sat quietly for a moment, his mind engaging in an internal dialogue. Taking a deep breath, his eyes gradually filled with determination. Pushing his doubts aside, he stood up straight, meeting Daniel's gaze, no longer with hesitation, but with confidence in the opportunity and responsibility ahead. "Thank you for trusting me," Ethan said, his voice firm, each word etched with resolve. "I'll do my best not to let you down." Daniel smiled with satisfaction, his eyes shining with confidence as he patted Ethan's shoulder lightly. "That's all I ask of you, Ethan. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive a list of potential team members and an initial plan. You have 1 month to get the new team up and running. Remember, great challenges come with great opportunities. The small Miller family kitchen was bathed in a warm golden glow from the old hanging lamp. Grandma Margaret was tidying up the dishes. Grandpa Edward sipped his now cold tea, and Leo was deeply engrossed in his homework at the table. Ethan entered, his expression unusual, as though carrying big news. He sat down beside Grandpa Edward, his hands gripping the edge of the table lightly, his gaze sweeping over his family. Grandma, Grandpa, Leo, I have something to share with you today. Grandma Margaret looked up, her face tinged with worry. What is it, Ethan? Is everything all right at work? Leo glanced up from his notebook, curiosity sparkling in his eyes. Ethan, did you close another big deal? Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes shining with determination. His voice was firm as he said, Today, Mr. Daniel assigned me a new responsibility. I'll be leading a business team to expand into the Western region. The kitchen fell silent for a few moments. Grandma Margaret set the dish down, her face a mix of surprise and concern. Leading a new team? Ethan, are you ready for that? It's a big responsibility. Ethan turned to her, his smile soft but filled with confidence. Grandma, I know it won't be easy, but I've overcome many challenges to get here. I believe I'm capable of taking on this responsibility. He looked at Leo, his expression softening. Leo, I want to set an example for you. I want you to see that no matter where we start, if we're determined, we can go further than we ever imagined. Grandpa Edward placed his teacup down and nodded, his voice warm and steady. Ethan, I've always believed in you. If this is the path you choose, I'll always support you. Grandma Margaret sighed, her eyes softening with love and care. You've truly grown up, Ethan. I just hope you won't forget to take care of yourself. No matter how big the responsibility, don't push yourself too hard. Leo grabbed Ethan's hand enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan, I believe in you. One day I want to do great things like you. Ethan smiled warmly, his heart swelling with gratitude as he looked at each family member. His voice was resolute as he spoke. I promise, Grandpa, Grandma, and Leo, I'll not only take care of this family, but also make you proud. The small kitchen returned to its tranquil state, but within it, Ethan felt the immense weight of responsibility and the growing flame of determination burning brighter than ever. Ethan stood in the front yard of the family's modest home, hands in his coat pockets, gazing up at the starry sky. The quiet night was accompanied by a gentle breeze rustling the trees and the soft glow of the porch light. The stillness seemed to draw Ethan into the depths of his memories. He recalled his earliest days as a young, inexperienced intern, full of nerves and doubts. He thought about the mistakes that earned Jack's sharp rebukes, Tyler's disdainful looks, and the moments when he almost gave up. Yet, he also remembered Samantha's unexpected kindness, Daniel's unwavering belief in him, and the tough clients he had won over with his persistence. Ethan chuckled softly, his eyes reflecting gratitude as he thought of his family. Their unwavering support had always been his greatest motivation. The image of Grandpa Edward's calm demeanor, Grandma Margaret's loving concern, and Leo's bright-eyed admiration were etched vividly in his mind. He whispered to himself, his voice carrying a quiet vow into the night. Every step I've taken has been forged through challenges. What I've achieved today isn't the end. It's only the beginning. My journey has just started. Ethan looked up, his gaze firm, the fire of determination in his heart blazing brighter than ever. On the starry canvas above, a shooting star streaked across the sky, as if affirming the future he was ready to embrace, a future he would face with unwavering courage and belief in himself. After the emotional journey you have just experienced, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If Ethan's story inspired you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment about your favorite moment or how this story resonated with you. Let's spread the message of perseverance and determination together.